We are going to be reading Sketches by Eric Walters. I'm going to start with the author's note because I think it's important and it adds a little bit of context to the book, and then we'll jump right in. I grew up in Toronto in a single-parent family in an area just by the stockyards. It was a rough and tumble sort of neighborhood populated by so many experiencing life issues that were overwhelming. So overwhelming that many people just didn't make it. Instead, they were crushed. They fell by the wayside, disappeared into the cracks, went to jail, became addicted to drugs and alcohol, died, or simply gave up or faded away to live a life so much less than what could have been, should have been. Many of them were good, decent people. All they needed was a hand to pull them up, somebody to believe in them, to offer a few words of encouragement or a few dollars that would have made all the difference. Nobody was there. Sketches is a work of fiction based on a real place, Sketch. I made up the people in this book, but I didn't make up the situations. Those are real. Thank goodness there are places like Sketch where they realize that homeless people are people. Street kids are kids. Disadvantaged youths are youths. I don't see Sketch so much as a building, but as an outreached hand. My special thanks to Rudy Rudiman, Phyllis Novak, and the rest of the staff of Sketch for doing what they do to make the world a better place, and for offering me their hands to make this book work. I grew up just about an hour outside of Toronto. Luna's here today. And a lot of the issues that Implicity brings up in this are really real to me and things that I've witnessed. There's this beautiful cover on the book. And here's a small note about the cover. The cover for this book was created as a part of a photo contest operated by Sketch, the real art drop-in center on which this book is based. Young people involved in the center were set out into their world with cameras and asked to capture images that represented parts of the city known to them, but basically unknown to those who work, walk, and live in the city. Of the many wonderful pictures that were taken, this photo was chosen. Chapter 1. "Excuse me," I said as the woman walked up. She was middle-aged and well-dressed in a sort of business outfit. I took a deep breath. "I have to get home, and I feel so stupid, but somehow I lost my money for the subway. It must have fallen out of my pocket, and I was wondering if maybe you could spare some change. I don't need much." She stopped walking and stood in front of me, listening. Stopping was a good sign. Listening was a better sign. "I already have $1, so I only need another 85 cents. She looked hesitant, like she wasn't sure she should believe me, but didn't want to risk not believing me. "And I know my mother is going to be so worried if I'm not home soon," I add, trying to sound desperate and genuine at the same time. The woman looked like she was old enough to maybe have a daughter my age. "And if I got another quarter, I could even call home to let my mother know what happened and why I'm late, because I'm never late. I've never done anything this stupid before, and I feel so bad begging for money, and she worries so much, and—" "That's all right. I understand. Here you go," the woman said as she reached into one of the pockets of her jacket and pulled out $1 and a quarter. "Thank you so much," I beamed. "You're such a nice lady. I'll just call my mother right now and let her know." The woman flashed a big smile back and then walked away into the subway station and disappeared down the stairs. I stuffed the change into my pocket. "You really are quite the little actor." I turned around. It was my friend, Brent. "Thank you," I said, and gave a little bow from the waist. "How much you got so far, Dana?" Brent asked. "That makes $11, I said, thinking about the money I'd already collected and stuffed in my pocket. "That's not bad," he said. "Ashley said she's got about $5. Ashley was another of my friends. Actually, she and Brent and I were more than just friends. We were sort of a street family. Ashley wasn't far away. She was working one of the other 2 entrances to the subway. "How about you?" I asked. "Less than $2. "Is that all?" I asked. He shrugged. Chicks always get more money. Yeah, right. It's really a girl's world, isn't it? I said sarcastically. People just feel sorry for a girl out here begging for money. With me, they're sometimes afraid. I could understand that. Brett was a big guy, tall, with broad shoulders. He looked like a football player, and when he put on his mean face, he looked like someone you wouldn't want to mess with. I knew he was really a gentle guy who wouldn't hurt anybody. At least, not anybody who didn't try to hurt him or me or Ashley first. I'd already seen him jump in once when a guy started hassling Ashley. Brett threatened to tear his head off, and the guy took off pretty quick. Couldn't you just scare them into giving you money? I asked. Doesn't work. Pity works better than fear, and you look pretty pathetic. Thanks, I guess. But if it's just a girl thing, then how come Ashley hasn't got more money? I asked. She's not as believable as you. What does that mean? You really look like you did lose your money, you know. Like, if somebody gave you $1, you really would get on the subway and go back to your house in the suburbs, he explained. That's not going to happen, I snapped. Yeah, but you just look like that. I guess that's because you haven't been on the streets very long. Brett sounded tired when he said that. It certainly seemed like a long time to me. It was just over 3 weeks since I'd run away from home, but it felt like 3 months or 3 years or even 3 lifetimes ago. In some ways, it wasn't even like I'd run away at all. I just got on a bus, thinking I needed to kill some time. I didn't want to get home before my mother did, not if my stepfather was going to be there. And that bus led me to another, which led me to another, and then to the subway, and 4 hours later, there I was, in the city, and 30 miles from home. At that point, it was way past my curfew, and I didn't think I could retrace the steps to get home even if I'd wanted to. Of course, all I had to do was make a phone call, and my mother would have come down and got me, or told my stepfather to come and pick me up. But I wasn't calling anybody. Every time I passed a phone booth, I knew I could call, but I didn't. The first night on my own was scary. I stayed awake for most of it, drifted off for a while in a booth at an all-night donut shop, and finally fell asleep in the corner of the bus station, hidden behind some lockers. Nobody noticed me there. It was like I was invisible. Unfortunately, my backpack wasn't invisible. When I woke up, it was gone, along with all my school books, a drama assignment due the next day, and my favorite sweater. Well, I sure as hell wasn't sweating the school stuff at that point, but the sweater would have come in handy. Thank God I'd kept my wallet in my pocket. I used my bank card to take out some money, $40, and got some breakfast. I'd known that they were going to cut off my bank card. I would have taken out as much money as possible. I just didn't see it coming. That was so much like him, controlling, interfering, taking what wasn't his. He probably figured they could force me back home if they cut off the money, my money, the money I'd earned babysitting. That was almost $600 in there, and I couldn't get it. What right did they have to do that? What they didn't know was that when I found out the next day that the card had been suspended, I'd actually been trying to take out money to get a taxi home. I was scared, and I just wanted to go home. But cutting off my card made me get angry, and that anger kept me away. That was the day I ran into Brett and Ashley. Ashley was begging for money, using the same story we were using today. Maybe Brent didn't think she was believable, but she sounded pretty convincing to me. Even I gave her $1. Hey, she was that good. Or maybe I was just afraid not to. She was also pretty scary looking. Half an hour later, she came up to talk to me. She'd noticed that I was just hanging around. She talked to me and then introduced me to Brent. At first I was pretty nervous, wondering if I could trust them. But really, what choice did I have? It was more scary to be alone than to trust those two, so I swallowed my fear. Now, 3 weeks later, I don't know what I would have done if they hadn't taken me under their wings. Maybe I would have had to go home. No, I was never going home. Brent interrupted my thoughts. No offense, but you still look like a nice little girl from the suburbs. I look like a nice little girl from the suburbs who hasn't washed her hair in 2 weeks, I pointed out. It doesn't look that bad, he said. Thanks for the compliment. Just the words I've always wanted to hear. Your hair doesn't look that bad. You know what I mean. Ashley looks more street than you do. No argument there. I understood what he meant. Ashley was pretty, but there was a hardness to her. Her hair was still a little bit of half a dozen different colors it had been over the past months, and I wasn't really sure which, if any, was the real color. She looked kind of tough and tired. Life on the streets meant never getting enough sleep. Ashley had told me she'd been out on the streets for almost 6 months. This time. She'd run away a dozen times, the first when she was only 12. Now that she was 16, I guess, technically she wasn't on the run because she was old enough to live wherever she wanted. You live on the streets long enough, and it changes the way you look, and the way you look at things, Brett sighed. Then he took a deep breath and stood up a bit straighter, as if he was giving himself a mental kick in the butt. Anyway, back to work. Good idea, I agreed. You better try a little harder and get a few more bucks. So far, I know that 2 of us have enough money to eat tonight. Thanks for the encouragement, he said. I'm just joking. You know that, right? I asked. He smiled, turned, and disappeared around the corner of the subway station, heading back to the entrance he was covering. I had to get back to work myself. I saw another woman walking toward me. I took a deep breath. This wasn't easy. It still gave me a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, but not as bad as the hunger pain I was stuck with if I didn't do it. Excuse me, I said. I was just wondering if... The woman brushed right by me, not making eye contact, not slowing down, acting like she hadn't seen or heard me. Jerk, I mumbled under my breath. She turned around and scowled at me. That she'd heard. Thank goodness she kept walking. 2 women clutching bundles of shopping bags approached. Excuse me, I hate to bother you, but I lost my money and I have to get back home. I was wondering if either of you had any spare change so I could take the subway. I'm already late and my mother is going to be so worried. She should be worried. Letting a girl your age come downtown by yourself? One of the women said. How old are you? 14? I'm 16, I lied. This is a dangerous town for a 16-year-old, she continued. You can meet all sorts of people on these streets. People a young girl like you really shouldn't meet. I am a little scared, I said, trying to sound convincing. That wasn't much of an act. There had been a few times since I'd left home that I wasn't at least a little scared. I just want to get home before it gets dark, I said, adding a desperate note. Oh, that would be awful. I don't even want to imagine my little girl out here by herself. I don't think she'd even know what to do. Let me look for change, the woman said. She put down her shopping bags and then began rummaging through her purse. I have lots of plastic and bills, but nothing smaller than a 20. How about you, Doris? She asked the second woman. I can check. She put her bags down too and began looking through her purse. Here we go, she said, and she pulled out a ticket. A subway ticket. Gee, thanks. I was trying to hide my disappointment. I thought I might get that $20 bill, and now I had a subway ticket. What good was a subway ticket? She pressed it into my hand and then picked up her shopping bags. Now you hurry home before you give your poor mother a nervous breakdown. You kids have no idea how hard it is to be a mother. That's right, Doris, no idea. I keep saying to my Angela that she won't know the grief she's caused me until she has children of her own. Thanks for the ticket, I said, and started to walk away. Wait, one of them called out. I stopped and turned around. Aren't you going the wrong way? The subway is this way. Yeah, I know, I said. I just want to call my mother before I leave. I know she'll be worried, and I want to phone her. I pointed to a phone booth at the corner and started walking away again. Ah, I could hear the woman say, such a considerate girl. Yes, considerate. But maybe she could wash that hair a little more often, added Doris as they walked away. If what she'd said hadn't been so funny and so true, I might have felt insulted. I did feel really grungy. I also felt hungry. We hadn't had anything except a coffee and a donut each today, and I was sore from sleeping on the ground or on concrete floors. At least I wasn't cold right now, but that would change when the sun went down. June had warm days, but the nights were still pretty cool, even downright cold. Once I was sure the two women had made their way down the stairs to the subway, I returned to my spot right in front of the doors. Another man came up towards the subway. "Excuse me, I was wondering if I could spare some change so you can get home because you lost your money," the man said, cutting me off. Yeah, that's right," I stammered. "Yeah, right, but it's not the truth," he said. "And the reason I know is that maybe you don't remember me, but I remember you, and that's the line you used when you stopped me and I gave you money a couple days ago." "You gave me money?" I asked. This was the only time we'd worked at this subway station. "At the next station on this line, I gave you $1, he snapped. He did look familiar. "I already gave you $1, he repeated. "Well, that explains it," I said. "If you'd given me $1.85, I could have gotten home." I walked away before he could react. Brent had said that as long as we didn't work the same station too often, we wouldn't run into the same people. That certainly sounded like a good theory. Too bad it didn't work. I spun back around, saw that the man had gone into the subway, and headed back into my spot once again. I didn't want to, not after that little exchange, but what choice did I have if I wanted to eat? It was starting to get busier. People streamed by, mothers with small children, business people rushing home, and university students carrying backpacks. There wasn't much point in asking the university students for money because some of them had less cash than I did. After begging for change the past few weeks, I'd pretty much figured out who was a waste of my time. You looked at their eyes. Did they make eye contact, or try to look away, or just pretend I wasn't even there? You could tell by how fast they were walking. The faster they were moving, the less chance they'd drop some money in my hand. A man in a business suit, carrying a briefcase, walked towards me. He was moving slowly and looking right at me. He had a sort of smile on his face. All good signs. "Excuse me, I lost my money and I was wondering if you had some spare change so I could buy a subway ticket and go home. My parents will be really worried if I'm not home soon and—" "How much do you need?" He stopped and put his briefcase down on the sidewalk. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out his wallet. As he opened it up, I could see that there was a wad of bills. I don't need much, just $1 or $2. That would pay for my subway ticket, and I could make a phone call home as well to let them know that I'm okay." He pulled out two $20 bills. "I don't have anything smaller. Are you sure all you need is a couple dollars?" he asked. "Well, maybe you could take a taxi home instead of the subway and get there faster." "That would be really nice. Really nice," I said, barely able to believe he was offering me all that money. "How old are you?" he asked. "I'm almost 17. "Oh, I thought you were younger, but that's okay." He offered the money to me, and I reached out to take it, but he suddenly pulled his hand away. "Do you want the money? All $40? he asked. I nodded my head. "Okay, but you have to answer a question for me," he said. "What do you want to know?" I asked hesitantly. "And if you're honest, you can have the money." "Yeah, what do you want to know?" "You're not really going home, are you?" I didn't know what to say. What did he want me to say? "You're living on the streets, right?" he asked. What was the point in denying it? He knew. I nodded my head. "That's what I thought," he said. "And you're really not 17. Again, I nodded. "How old are you?" 15? I paused. "Almost 15, I admitted. "That's a nice age. Maybe a little older than I like, but still nice. Come with me." "Come where?" I asked, feeling scared and a bit creeped out now. Let's just go over to that alley right over there." He pointed off to the side. "It'll take a few minutes, you and me, and you get your money." My eyes widened in shock and surprise. Finally, I understood what he meant. I stepped back. "Don't you want the money, little girl?" I shook my head and staggered back a few more steps. "What's wrong? You want more than $40? he asked. "Come on, sweetie. We're only talking 4 or 5 minutes. You're cute, and I like him young, but nobody's worth more than $40 for a few minutes." A shudder went through my entire body. "Well, what do you say, honey?" I took a deep breath. "What I say What I say is that you're a freaking creep. Keep your voice down, he hissed. I'm not doing anything you say, you pervert, I screamed. Please be quiet. You can have the money, he said, reaching out to me with the 20s. I don't want your money, I shrieked and slapped his hands. The 2 bills fluttered to the ground. You should be arrested, I screamed. People all around us were turning and staring and gawking. I didn't care. What's going on here? A loud voice demanded. I turned around. It was a policeman. What's going on? Boy, this guy was going to be in trouble. Maybe the cop would arrest him or... Thank goodness you're here, officer, the man exclaimed. I stared in shock. Why would he be glad that the cop was here? Did you hear what she was yelling at me? The man demanded. Everybody on the street heard it, the cop said. He turned to the crowd that was gathering around us. There's nothing to see here. All of you get moving. Hesitantly, reluctantly, the people started away and the crowd dissipated. What exactly is happening? The cop asked. She was threatening me, the man said. This little street tramp was begging for money, and when I wouldn't give her any, she threatened me. She said she'd claim I made sexual advances towards her. I offered her $40 to just be quiet, and she demanded more. She said she'd make me regret not cooperating, and you heard her with your own ears. My mouth dropped open. I was too shocked to even think of what to say. And I'm the last person in the world to do what she's accusing me of, the man continued. I'm a businessman. I have a daughter of my own her age. I'm a property owner. You're a liar and a pervert, I yelled, my brain and mouth finally snapping back into gear. I am nothing of the sort, you filthy little piece of street trash. You should be arrested. You should be arrested. The only thing I am guilty of is being idiotic enough to stand up to your blackmail. I should have just given you more money like you demanded and gone on my... Enough, the policeman yelled, cutting him off mid-sentence. He looked at the man, and then he looked at me. His gaze was hard and angry. I lowered my eyes to the ground. The 220s still lay there on the pavement. Were you begging? The cop demanded. I didn't know what to say. Answer the question, he snapped angrily. I nodded. It's illegal to beg for money. I should run you in. In fact, I should probably bring you in anyway, in case someone actually gives a damn about you and filed a runaway report. If he arrested me, they'd call my mother, and then I'd have to go home. My right hand slipped up the sleeve of my left arm. My fingers rubbed against the slight ridges that crisscrossed my arm. Somehow, it felt almost reassuring. Shouldn't she be arrested for trying to extort money too? The man asked. Sir, I think that... The officer began. I'm just so glad that you believe my story, the man said, interrupting. I didn't say that, the officer replied sharply. I did a double take. He was staring at the man with that same hard, cold glare he'd aimed at me. He didn't believe what he was saying. He knew it wasn't true. Are you calling me a liar? The man demanded of the officer. I'm not calling you anything. I'm a taxpayer. I pay your salary, and I demand to know your name and badge number. You want my badge and name, do you? The officer asked. Immediately. The cop chuckled. You'll get both of those, the officer said. They'll be on your arrest report for solicitation. The man's eyes got as big as saucers. Solicitation of a minor, the policeman added. But I wasn't doing... Yes, you were, the officer snapped, cutting him off. And if you argue with me any more, I might just find something else to charge you with. The man looked as though he was about to say something else, but he shut his mouth instead. He looked so terrified that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I've been on the streets a long time, the officer said, and I ain't no idiot. He paused. Now, we have two choices. He paused again. I can write this up, or we can just all walk away. I can leave? The guy must have been scared because he sounded like he couldn't believe his ears. The officer nodded. I'll even walk you to the subway to make sure you get on your way safely. Walk him to the subway? Was this guy joking? Thank you so much, officer. Thank you. I'll do that right now. I'll leave. I'll go. I promise. And since you're going, we won't need to continue our conversation about what you could be charged with and how that might play out in court and with your family and in the newspapers and on the evening news and with your employer. Understand? I understand. Thank you. Thank you. the man spluttered. The officer turned to face me. And you, beat it, or I'll arrest you for begging and prostitution. Prostitution? I would never. Don't you go lying to me too. You live on the street. You end up hooking sooner or later. Now, I'm walking this guy to the subway platform to make sure he gets on his way. If you're still here when I get back, you can count on being arrested. You understand? I nodded my head dumbly. Everything just kept turning around so fast it felt like my head was spinning. And I don't want to see you around here ever again, he said. Matter of fact, if I see you hanging around the streets, my streets, being arrested will be the least of your worries, if you know what I'm saying. So beat it. The cop spun back around and he and the man started for the subway entrance. I staggered away a few feet, then stopped. The two $20 bills were still there in the dirt beside the sidewalk. Dana, are you all right? Brent and Ashley were right there. I guess they've been waiting for the officer to clear out. We've got to get out of here before the cop comes back. I stammered. I burst into tears. Brent threw his arms around me, and I felt protected and safe. That freaking pervert. Did you see him? Was he the guy with the cop? I nodded. He wanted me to give him money. Money for $40. It's there, I said, turning around and pointing to the ground. Ashley rushed over and grabbed the two bills from the ground. Here, she said, offering them to me. I don't want his money, I yelled. Take it easy, Brent said. We do want his money. Ashley handed him the bills. We have to leave, I said. We have to get out of here before the cops comes back or else he'll arrest me. I struggled free and Brent released his grip. Come on, let's get out of here, Ashley said. She walked away and I started to follow until I realized she was leading us towards the alley the man had pointed at. I don't want to go that way, I said as I stopped in my tracks. We can go any way you want. Let's just not stay around here, Brent said. Come on. He grabbed me by the arm and led me off in another direction, away from both the subway and the alley. Looking on the bright side, at least we have enough money now to get a really good meal and a couple packs of smokes, maybe some entertainment, Brent said. What do you mean by entertainment? I asked. Maybe something to get high. A nickel bag, maybe, Brent explained. We have the money for it, he said, holding the two 20s aloft. That's my money, I said, and I grabbed it from him. I thought you didn't want it, Ashley questioned. I didn't. But now that we have it, I know what we should do with it, I answered. What do you want to do? Brent asked. I don't want to sleep in some abandoned building tonight. I don't want to sleep in a squat. I want us to get a room for the night, someplace with a bed and a bathroom and a shower, someplace where I can wash my hair. A shower would be nice, Ashley agreed. She turned to Brent. Do you know any place we can get a room for the night for $40? I know a place we can get a room for $25. 25? Are you sure? I asked. It's not exactly the Holiday Inn, he said. It's on the Lakeshore Strip. I know the guy who works nights on the desk. Is it a nice room? I asked. It's a $25 room, he said, but it's a lot nicer than any of the places we've stayed in for the last few weeks, and we'll still have money left over for at least cigarettes and maybe something else. As long as we have some money left over after we eat, I said. I'd rather have smokes than food, Brent commented. Smoking is disgusting, I said. Yes, Mother. I don't know why anybody would smoke. I'm trying to impress my peer group, Brent joked, and despite my tears, I started to laugh. Just my luck. I get to hang out with the only runaway in the world who doesn't smoke, Brent said, shaking his head. How about you just shut up and lead us to the motel?